There's been a major shake-up in Nigeria's military, with President Bola Tinubu replacing several top security officials. No reason has been given for the move, but it comes as the government denied rumours of an attempted coup following local media reports that at least 20 military officers were arrested last month.
You ever noticed how in Africa, power never falls quietly? There's always that strange pause before the storm, like the air itself knows something's off. That's what it felt like in Nigeria this week. No warning, no speech, just a sudden announcement. The generals are out, 3 of them, gone overnight. And then the rumors started, coup talk, arrests, nervous smiles from politicians pretending everything's fine. But here's the thing. This isn't just another government move. It feels bigger, like a country holding its breath, unsure of what it's becoming. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's a transformation, or maybe it's both. Because Nigeria, like the rest of Africa right now, isn't collapsing or rising. It's mutating. And when a giant mutates, you pay attention. But what's going on? Is Nigeria about to become like Tanzania? Let's find out. It began the way most political earthquakes do in Africa, quietly. Almost politely. A short statement from the presidency, barely 2 paragraphs long. No televised address, no explanation, just a bureaucratic announcement that Nigeria's top military chiefs had been relieved of their duties. That's it. But anyone who has lived long enough under African politics knows that nothing that simple is ever that simple. 3 men, General Christopher Musa, Chief of Defense Staff, Vice Admiral Emmanuel Ogala, Chief of Naval Staff, and Air Marshal Hassan Abubakar, Chief of Air Staff, were gone overnight. The replacements were swift, almost rehearsed. Major General Olufemi Oluyede stepped in as the new defense chief. The new Army, Navy, and Air Force heads were appointed with phrases like professionalism and renewed vigilance. On paper, it looked neat. In reality, it felt like a preemptive strike.
Security. President Bola Tinubu has approved a major shakeup in the hierarchy of Nigeria's military leadership with the appointment of Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede as the Chief of Defense Staff, a move aimed at strengthening the nation's security architecture.
See, this is Nigeria we're talking about, Africa's heavyweight, the country that calls itself the giant. But lately, even the giant has been walking with a limp. The nation has seen coups before, smelled them from miles away, and this smelled familiar. Rumors were already running wild that at least 20 military officers had been detained weeks earlier, among them a brigadier general and a colonel. Abuja's gossip networks, always faster than the news, said the arrests were linked to a plot. The defense headquarters denied it, of course. They always do. But denial in Nigerian politics often means confirmation in progress. You could sense the nervousness in how the state responded to unrelated things. When protesters hit the streets of Abuja demanding the release of separatist leader Nnamdi Kanu, the police didn't just disperse them, they overreacted. Tear gas, mass arrests, roadblocks. That kind of overreaction doesn't come from confidence, it comes from paranoia. It's what a government does when it's not sure how much of the military still answers the phone when it calls. Tinubu's administration framed the reshuffle as routine, but if that were true, it wouldn't have felt like a lockdown. The atmosphere changed overnight. Tighter security around key government buildings, hushed voices in the National Assembly, and a sense among insiders that something inside the military had shifted. Abuja became quieter, not in peace but in caution. And maybe this is what defines Nigeria's democracy today, a democracy that behaves like it's always expecting betrayal. The army, meant to defend borders, has become an internal threat. Not because it wants to, but because the political class never stopped fearing its shadow. Since independence, Nigeria's civilian governments have learned one lesson too well. When the generals start whispering, presidents stop sleeping. So now, here we are again. A president acting before the whispers grow louder. Soldiers pretending they aren't watching. Citizens pretending they still believe. But maybe the question isn't why Tinubu changed his top generals. Maybe it's why now. What made the commander-in-chief decide that loyalty mattered more than continuity? What did he hear in those barracks that shook him so deeply? Because one thing's certain, in Africa, generals aren't fired for incompetence. They're fired for thinking too much. You can't really understand what's happening in Nigeria unless you look at the map. Not the physical one with borders and rivers, but the emotional one that stretches across West Africa. Because lately, every capital in the region has been living with one shared anxiety. Who's next? In the past 3 years alone, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, 3 of Nigeria's immediate neighbors, have all seen their governments overthrown. And what's interesting isn't that coups are happening again. It's how people are reacting to them. In the old days, a military takeover meant fear, curfews, and international condemnation. But now, when soldiers appear on state TV, people cheer. They wave flags. They call it liberation.
More than 1,000 people gathered in Burkina Faso's capital on Tuesday to cheer in their new military rulers.
Why? Because democracy, as the West sold it to Africa, has started to look like a bad loan. High interest, no results. Decades of voting haven't brought jobs, safety, or dignity. So, when young captains and colonels show up saying they'll clean up corruption, stop foreign interference, and restore national pride, people listen. They don't see men in uniform. They see hope wearing camouflage. And Nigeria, sitting right next to this new axis of defiance, feels the tremor more than anyone else. The generals in Bamako, Ouagadougou, and Niamey all said the same thing, that their coups were not betrayals of democracy, but acts of salvation from failed politicians and Western manipulation. And honestly, whether you agree with them or not, their message found an audience. That's the danger for Abuja. Because what started as isolated revolts is becoming contagious, not militarily, but psychologically. People across the region are beginning to question not just who governs them, but how. They look at Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, young, fiery, unapologetic, standing in front of cheering crowds, refusing IMF loans, banning French troops, building his own gold refinery, and they wonder, why can't we do that too? For Nigeria, that's a terrifying question, because the country has the same ingredients that made those other coups possible: frustrated youth, an unpopular government, a tired elite, and an army that's seen too much blood and too little purpose. The only thing keeping the balance is the illusion of control, and illusions don't last forever. So, maybe Tinubu's sudden military shakeup isn't paranoia at all. Maybe it's preventive medicine, a political vaccine against the same disease that toppled his neighbors. He saw the pattern. Coups don't start with bullets, they start with silence. When soldiers begin to feel more sympathy for citizens than for the state, the line between savior and traitor starts to blur. And that's exactly where Nigeria stands right now, at the edge of that blur. The president may have changed the players, but not the game. Because if loyalty has to be enforced rather than earned, then the question isn't whether a coup will happen, it's when. But maybe the deeper issue isn't about who holds power. Maybe it's about why power keeps slipping away. Why do so many African states, no matter who rules them, keep cycling between hope and disillusionment? Why do governments that start with promises of freedom always end up fearing their own people? Let's be honest, every conversation about Nigeria eventually circles back to one word: security. It's the country's most expensive budget line, its most repeated political promise, and yet its most consistent failure. You don't even need to live there to feel it. Just read the headlines: bombings in Borno, kidnappings in Kaduna, clashes in Katsina. It's like a drumbeat that never stops. And after a while, you stop asking what happened and start asking why it keeps happening. Because, truthfully, Nigeria's problem isn't that it's unsafe. It's fractured. The country isn't fighting one war, it's fighting 5, all at once, and none of them is fully defined. In the northeast, Boko Haram, that ghost that never dies, still haunts the villages it once conquered. Its offshoot, ISWAP, now taxes farmers, controls trade routes, and runs schools where ideology replaces education. In the northwest, bandits, a polite word for organized warlords, kidnap entire school classes and negotiate ransom payments with impunity. In the north-central states, Clashes between herders and farmers keep burning lives and livelihoods. And then in the southeast, the separatist movement, the same one led by Nnamdi Kanu, continues to brew a quieter rebellion, born not of religion or tribe, but exhaustion. How do you govern a country that's constantly at war with itself?
Now they are prisoners at Diffa's Central Police Station before being transferred to the capital. This is Boko Haram, shirtless, shoeless.
The military keeps saying it's winning. Every week, press conferences claim dozens of insurgents neutralized, communities secured, progress recorded. But if you listen to the people living in those so-called secure areas, you'll hear a different story. Roads too dangerous to drive, schools still abandoned, soldiers who show up one week and disappear the next. The truth is, Nigeria has been winning this war for over a decade, and somehow the enemy only keeps multiplying. And that's not just about firepower. It's about morale, the invisible currency of every army. Soldiers who haven't been paid in months, who fight with outdated weapons, who see their officers living in luxury while they sleep in trenches, those soldiers don't fight for victory. They fight for survival. The Americans can sell Nigeria $346 million worth of weapons, but you can't import integrity. You can't buy trust between a government and its defenders. You can't equip unity. That's what makes the current insecurity so dangerous. It's not only killing civilians, it's eroding the state from within. Every ambush, every kidnapping, every raid chips away at the idea of Nigeria itself. And maybe that's what keeps the president awake at night. Not the coup rumors, not even the protests, but the slow realization that power doesn't always fall with a bang. Sometimes it dissolves quietly, territory by territory, soldier by soldier, until one day the center no longer holds. So, yes, Tinubu changed his generals. But can a reshuffle fix a system that's already bleeding from its soul? Or are we just watching a country trying to patch bullet holes with policy statements? Let's pause for a second to say big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. Here's the part nobody in Abuja ever admits out loud. Nigeria's security crisis isn't just Nigerian anymore. It's international. Every bullet fired in the north, every drone hovering above Sambisa Forest, every training session at a military base, all of it has foreign fingerprints. And that's not a coincidence. It's design. You see, when a country becomes too unstable to manage itself but too important to be ignored, the West doesn't step back. It steps in, quietly, strategically. Nigeria, with its oil, size, and geography, is the perfect example. Washington, London, and Brussels don't want a strong Nigeria. They want a manageable one. A partner, not a power. So, every time the insecurity flares up, they offer help, and help always comes with paperwork, strings, and silence. Earlier this year, the U.S. approved a $346 million arms sale to Nigeria, including fighter jets, precision weapons, and surveillance gear. It was sold to the public as an act of partnership, a boost for counterinsurgency. But think about it. When did foreign weapons ever fix what foreign influence helped break? You can't outsource sovereignty. You can't subcontract independence. Yet that's exactly what's been happening, piece by piece, deal by deal. And if you look deeper, it becomes clearer. Western powers are nervous because Nigeria sits at the intersection of two worlds, the old Western-aligned Africa and the new independent one rising from the Sahel. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have already torn up their defense pacts with France. They've turned to Russia and China, built new alliances and redefined what security means. And they haven't collapsed. They've survived, even thrived politically, if not economically. That terrifies Western capitals more than any insurgent. So when Tinubu replaced his generals, it wasn't just about silencing whispers in the barracks. It was also about signaling to Washington and London that Nigeria still plays by their rules. It was reassurance disguised as reform. We're still on your side. But here's the irony. That kind of reassurance doesn't build respect. It builds dependency. Because the West doesn't just sell weapons, it sells narratives. Without us, you'll fall. Without our intelligence, your army can't function. It's the same story they told for decades, and the same story Africa is finally starting to rewrite. You can see the shift. Across the continent, people are beginning to question this constant foreign tutoring. Why should Africa, a continent older than Europe itself, still need permission to define its own peace? Why is every African success followed by sanctions, and every failure followed by aid? That's why this military shakeup matters beyond Nigeria. It's not just a domestic reshuffle. It's a test of loyalty in a new Cold War being fought over African influence. The question is no longer who protects Nigeria, but who controls the protection. And maybe that's the real battle now, not between soldiers and civilians, but between sovereignty and supervision. Because if Nigeria keeps fighting wars with borrowed weapons and borrowed agendas, how long before the victory itself belongs to someone else? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. When you strip away the politics, the strategy, the press statements, what you're left with is a restless people. Nigerians are tired, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind that seeps into the soul. It's the exhaustion of watching history repeat itself while leaders act like it's progress. So when thousands took to the streets in Abuja demanding Nnamdi Kanu's release, it wasn't just about one man or one cause. It was about years of bottled frustration, about promises made and broken so many times that even hope has started to sound suspicious. These weren't just members of the indigenous people of Biafra waving flags. Many were ordinary citizens, traders, students, workers, all screaming a version of the same sentence: "We're done being ignored." The state's reaction said everything. Tear gas, arrests, and that familiar official tone, maintaining public order. But public order in Nigeria usually means public silence. Governments here have a habit of mistaking obedience for peace. They don't realize that the quieter people become, the more dangerous it gets. Silence in a place like this isn't stability. It's pressure building under the surface. You can feel that pressure in conversations, in bus rides through Lagos, in markets in Onitsha, in WhatsApp groups that now sound more like political think tanks. People no longer talk about who's in power. They talk about whether power even matters anymore, whether the system itself is worth believing in. And this is where things start to echo across borders. Because when young Nigerians look north at Burkina Faso's Ibrahim Traoré or Mali's Assimi Goïta, they don't just see soldiers, they see defiance. They see leaders who, for better or worse, speak in the language of pride, not permission. They see countries standing up to France, to the IMF, to the same Western structures that have kept Africa begging while pretending to be partners. It's not that Nigerians want a coup, most don't, but they're starting to understand why people elsewhere supported one. When institutions stop protecting citizens, the citizens start romanticizing those who promise to tear the institutions down. That's the dangerous turning point, when frustration begins to look like faith. Tinubu's government should be terrified of that, but not because of soldiers, but because of students. Because of the millions of underemployed, overeducated, digitally connected young Nigerians who no longer wait for newspapers to tell them what's wrong. They see it, tweet it, live it. They are Africa's most online generation and perhaps its most unforgiving. The real coup won't come from the army barracks. It'll come from the timelines, the classrooms, the slums. The next revolution won't wear uniforms. It'll wear Wi-Fi. And this generation, unlike those before it, doesn't need permission to organize. It just needs a reason. So what happens when patience finally runs out? What happens when a person decides that the only thing left to lose is their silence? If there's one thing history keeps trying to teach Africa, it's that collapse and rebirth often share the same heartbeat. What feels like a breakdown is sometimes just a transition, the painful moment before reinvention. And Nigeria, right now, is standing exactly in that space. Between warning and awakening, between fatigue and fire. The shakeup inside its military may look like panic from the outside, but perhaps it's also instinct, the nation's way of fighting off decay before it spreads too deep. Tinubu's purge of top generals wasn't just about control, it was about fear. Fear that the system was losing its grip, not to enemies abroad, but to apathy within. Because the real danger to any African state isn't invasion or rebellion. It's indifference. It's when citizens stop believing that their country can ever get better. But here's the thing, Nigeria still can. And if it does, the ripple will be continental. Because like it or not, Nigeria isn't just another African state, it's a signal. Its fall or rise sends messages far beyond its borders. When Nigeria sneezes, the region doesn't just catch a cold, it rewrites its policies. Its youth culture influences music from Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Its tech industry inspires Kenya and Ghana. Its elections, flawed as they are, shape how the African Union measures democracy. That's why what happens now matters so much. If Tinubu uses this military reshuffle as a chance to restore trust, clean out corruption, and rebuild morale, he could turn a crisis into a legacy. Not just for himself, but for Africa's image of what leadership looks like. But if this move becomes yet another exercise in tightening control, then Nigeria will sink deeper into the same quicksand that's already swallowed others. The slow, suffocating collapse where power keeps expanding even as legitimacy shrinks. And this isn't just about politics, it's about Africa's spiritual health. For too long, the continent's strength has been measured by what it exports: oil, gold, cobalt, and manpower. But true power isn't in exports, it's in endurance. It's in the ability to define yourself even when the world keeps defining you by your crises. Look around. Africa is no longer the helpless continent it was once portrayed to be. Nations are breaking away from IMF dependencies, trading among themselves, building refineries, satellites, and digital currencies. The question now isn't whether Africa can rise, it's whether it can stay united while doing it. And that's where Nigeria's story becomes symbolic again. This shakeup is a mirror for the continent. Will Africa keep reacting to chaos or start planning its own order? Will it let outsiders dictate its future or learn from its neighbors who've already broken those chains? Maybe this isn't the end of something. Maybe it's the beginning. Maybe the whispers of coups, the protests, the restlessness, all of it are signs of life, not death. Africa is moving again, shaking off its passivity, rediscovering its anger, and anger, when guided by vision, is just another word for rebirth. So as the dust settles in Abuja, one thing feels certain: Africa isn't being destabilized, it's being redefined. What we're witnessing isn't the collapse of order, it's the birth of a new one. The only question now is, who will be brave enough to lead it? Do you think Nigeria's power struggle is a warning for the rest of Africa, or the beginning of something bigger? Let us know in the comments section. Should Africa keep trusting Western security help or start building its own defense networks? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.
Classic Music.